Today we are going to be talking about some of the common struggles and how to set healthy boundaries when it comes to being an eldest daughter. I have seen the TikTok trends and just different responses that many people have had when it comes to the struggles of being an eldest daughter. And though we laugh and we joke and we make the comments and things about what that experience looks like, it seems to be a low-key epidemic among Gen Z, and just the stresses and the struggles and things that we have walked through when it comes to trying to just figure out how to find ourselves, how to live, how to have fun. And I know personally that that has been a lifelong struggle for me because, as I shared in my testimony video, I had to grow up so early and I was forced to help raise, some of my siblings and different things like that. And so once I got out on my own, life was just so different. And I didn't realize that being an older daughter, among other things that I went through, had really shaped some of the negative things that I had picked up along the way, but also prepared me for some of the things that I could use, when it comes to navigating, my career and, different things that I was more prepared for than the average young girl my age because I was more mature. So, some of the common struggles, at least from what I've heard and what I've experienced as an eldest daughter, is being a caretaker when you are supposed to be taken care of. I think that that has been a trend that many of us struggle with, whether we are having to give advice, whether we come from a low income background, so we're having to take on jobs and, changing diapers. And if your parents weren't the best parents, you kind of became the protector for your siblings. I know that I was to some extent for mine. And when you are now in your early 20s, late 20s, or even early 30s, and you're like, okay, who am I outside of being a protector, being a caregiver? It's kind of a struggle, at least for me, because I was so used to taking care of other people. And, that created unhealthy habits that I developed in my relationships, especially with, men, and just trying to find myself where I want to be taken care of. I want to be embraced. I want to feel safe. But at the same time, I'm like hyper independent, low key type A, don't do this, don't do that without, talking to me. And I realized that that was very unhealthy and it drove people away in different seasons of my life. And I was like, Jaylee, you have to work on yourself and find the balance of, I was a caretaker in that season of my life and it has shaped me. But now I need to learn how to take care of me and how to find the balance in not just taking care of myself, but also allowing other people to love me and honor me and respect me, especially when it comes to men. One of the second struggles that I found kind of challenging for me is being the first to do everything. So when you're the eldest, you are walking a path among your siblings that obviously they haven't walked before, and they look to you low key for things that they may not be able to go to your mom or your dad about, because though you are kind of parental in nature, you're not necessarily the parent, right? I always felt this pressure, especially coming from low, income background, single family household, where I only had one parent raising us. It was a lot of pressure for me to just figure things out by myself. I was always smart, 4.0 GPA. I really enjoyed education and different things like that. But, it was a lot to balance when you are trying to obviously grow, find yourself. You're trying to figure out what your goals are. And then you have little ones behind you that not only are you protecting, but you're also trying to encourage them and, help them see that they can make it, they can overcome whatever it may be that they're working on. So I kind of found myself battling perfectionism. And I was like, I can't make mistakes. I can't do this. I can't do that. Now I did. And before I got saved, I was very sneaky with my stuff, y'all. I was out here doing stuff I didn't have no business. But thank God for his mercy. But I still felt this need to have this kind of image, if you will, not just with my siblings, but low key with other people around me, because I was the poster child, even though, internally there was some interesting relationship dynamics I had with my family. Outwardly, I was the child that, didn't get in trouble, didn't do anything major, had broke some generational patterns and curses that had been among the women in my family and stuff like that. So I just kind of felt this pressure to just stay perfect. And again, when I got out on my own, I realized life is nothing but perfect. I am definitely far from perfect. And so when I was trying to achieve goals or, hit certain things in areas of my life, I would feel so disappointed. I'd be like, oh my gosh, like, I know I'm a smart girl. Like, I know what to do. Very resilient, hardworking, all of the things. Yet, I'm not hitting this particular goal. And what I've come to learn, when you are a Christian, like, God's way of doing everything is so obviously different, very different than the world. And so there were times where I'm looking at God like, wait a minute, Lord, what are we doing here? I'm in God's house now, right? So I have to do things the Lord's way. He's not on Jay Lee's time. Jay Lee is on God's time. And that has been the longest battle, still battling it, because if some is not here in Amazon Prime 2 to 3 business days, look, I'm getting real impatient, I'm getting real irritable, agitated, crashing out, the whole nine. Just the pressure to succeed and be an example, is something that I think a lot of eldest daughters tend to struggle with. And it's just something that you need to be mindful of as you're growing and moving from one place to another in your different stages of adulthood, because you may not realize that it's impacting your relationships and how you show up in different spaces. Another thing that I personally dealt with, and this was one of the biggest ones as a fellow eldest or older daughter, is the lack of acknowledgement for my sacrifice. And I am sure that many eldest daughters probably feel the same way. In my case, there was a lot that my siblings, even to this day, they don't honor and they don't understand the things that I had to endure. My mom had me at 15 years old. And so you talking about a child having a child. And I saw the early stages of my mother. And she had to learn and grow. And again, she's a child that just had a child. And so I saw a lot of instability and volatility, which, if you think about it, most young people go through. You really don't find your footing and find your stability for most people until their 30s. But for some, maybe your early to late 20s, depending on what your goals are. And so by the time my siblings are born, she's at different stages of her life where she's more stable and she's growing and becoming more stable throughout time. And so I hold that not against her, not against them. It's just the cards that God dealt me. But at the end of the day, there were moments, even still, where my siblings and oldest daughters, y'all may know, some of them, sometimes they think they know everything, and it's like, I'm trying to help you, I'm trying to guide you, because I see this caution sign coming up. I've walked through this, yet you would rather go bump your head than to use the wisdom that I'm trying to impart into you. And with that, I personally had to learn how to set healthy boundaries with my siblings. There were moments where I wanted to protect them so much that I did become more of a mother than a sibling. And this is for somebody out there. Sometimes your siblings just need you to be a sister. You don't have to be mama bear. They want a relationship with you, and you need to honor that God has given them wisdom too. You're not going to always be right about everything. And so I believe that that's going to bring healing to a relationship where You may feel unappreciated, you may not feel acknowledged by your siblings, and that may come with time and maturation and even some healing, depending on the type of dynamic that your family has. But as an eldest daughter, remember that you aren't Mama Bear. You're not meant to be. And though you may have been forced to be that, as time comes and goes and you all become older, learn how to find that dynamic with your siblings if you can, and just be a sister. And I believe that that door will open where you guys can have a healthy relationship. One of the final common struggles that I have dealt with, that I think is very common among older daughters, is just learning how to set healthy boundaries. As I stated in the beginning of this video, when you have been forced to be an adult at the age of whatever, it's hard, and when you transition into adulthood, you're having to unlearn certain behaviors, but you're also having to learn certain behaviors. I found myself, if I'm being transparent with you guys, I am in my mid, going into now my late 20s. And so there is a lot that I missed out on in my early 20s. And when I say missed out, for me, that is just kind of like falling and bumping my head, going and having fun and being carefree and just kind of letting life come as I wanted it to in certain ways. And because I am first gen everything, and then being oldest daughter and just the first to do a lot of things that I'm doing, it was a lot of pressure that was put on me, and some I put on myself. And so when I left my home, or my childhood home, when I'm now engaging with people that come from different walks of life than myself, sometimes those boundaries were kind of hard for me to set for myself. I was either on one end or the other. And I think one of the biggest areas where I know I struggled was with men, and not being able to receive love. I'm still learning what submitting and understanding the office of a woman, what that looks like when you are now a Christian. But even if you're not a Christian, like this kind of dynamic of being this alpha male, there's nothing wrong with being assertive. There's nothing wrong with having certain qualities as a strong woman. That's not an issue. But when you do it to the point where you drive away individuals and you're not channeling that assertiveness and the just boldness that you have for the right things, it can become a toxic thing, and it can be used unto your demise or even the demise of those around you. I have met women that they were so alpha male, they climbed the ladder in their career, they did all of the kind of superficial things that they wanted to, but deep down it was a wound that was in them that they didn't realize and recognize. And now they're in their 40s and 50s, and they're like, oh, I want to get married, oh, I want to have kids. And I'm a believer that all things are possible with Christ, but being realistic, we know that the chances of certain things are and can be a little more difficult. So yeah, as you are navigating and healing from being an older daughter, be mindful of some of these things that may be in you. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but just work on it. Deal with yourself. I am a big believer that self-improvement is the best improvement. What I have learned with Christ is that every time I have been in a situation, every time I felt like someone wronged me, every time I felt like I was justified, I was right, God always reminds me to deal with me. There's always something that He shows me that I could have done better, or could look at the situation a little bit differently. And it's not to say that some of us don't need to be apologized to for how we were just kind of pushed into a motherly role so early. My prayer is that those people would apologize to you guys, but for the sake of your freedom, so that you can move forward and be free and not be so rigid and thinking kind of type A like in a negative way. There is so much that you can do once you heal and come out of that kind of fight or flight mode. One other area that I wanted to briefly talk about that I didn't have mentioned here was kind of having this survivor's mentality. And I'm going to do a series on this in the future. But I think aside from low economic class, race, gender, and then the internal family dynamics, coming out of that survivor's mentality where you are literally just always in a state of fight or flight, that is something that I believe can be stemmed from being an oldest daughter. And so that's just something that as you are healing, growing, setting healthier boundaries, mending relationships, being mindful that I may have this, and Lord, what are areas in my life where I kind of operate in this fight or flight mode? Is it in my relationships? Is it in my career? Is it in, personal habits and just goals that, I'm trying to work towards, but I kind of self-sabotage myself in the process? I know that a lot of us have dealt with some trauma and some pain in this area, and sometimes it's not really understood because it's like where you're the matriarch of everything, which is not a fair role to put on anybody. We all have the right to engage in our lives and live and grow. But as you are healing, as you are even reflecting throughout this episode about, okay, Lord, like she hit on some things that I realize I'm still struggling with. What I want you to think about is how can you use some of these struggles as your strengths? What are some areas where you were kind of forced to be a mother, but now you can use this nurturing attribute for something in your personal life? So for example, I had to learn how to really nurture my siblings. I was always kind of the counterbalance to her wisdom sometimes. And so this is why I can sit before you guys and talk prayerfully in a nurturing yet discerned and decisive way. And it's not cursing and yelling and screaming and stuff like that, but I'm still making my point. And so that is something that I learned, and it was a struggle in the beginning, but I was able and am able now to use it as a strength. Another area as an example where I can say this was kind of a struggle to a strength is just having a lot of house responsibilities. So doing laundry, cleaning up, all the time, cleaning up after other people, different things like that. When I went off to college, I was shocked that there were so many students that did not know how to do their own laundry. There was a company on campus making a killing off of doing people's laundry for them. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing laundry since I was in elementary, middle school, it was something that wasn't uncommon for me. But there are a lot of people whose parents actually still do their laundry, which I think is kind of crazy. But, hey, do what you feel. I think that nevertheless, when I went off to school, when I got my first apartment, when I, went through certain transitions in my life, it wasn't as difficult as the average 21, 22, 23-year-old because I didn't have to call my mom for everything. She had already instilled it in me, whether it was negative or not. You have to be responsible for turning whatever that lesson was into a positive for your own benefit. And so having responsibility was something that, yeah, I shouldn't have had some responsibility that I had, but as I've gotten older, it's now become a strength of mine where some things in my house, it ain't gonna happen. I know how to manage certain things by myself. I want you to think about just different areas in your life where you, one, want to work on as an older daughter, but two, what are some of those areas that you felt like this was just too much when I was a young girl, but now I understand how I can use this particular struggle for my benefit in my life where I may be currently. And I would love to hear from you guys. Please put some comments, down below so I can see, What are some areas you had to overcome? Is it boundaries? Is it, feeling unappreciated and trying to find your self-worth? Is it learning how to communicate and, be a clear and effective communicator without cursing and yelling and screaming or even shutting down? What are some things that you have personally overcome and are going to try to overcome on your journey? God allowed you to be the first in your family. He allowed you to be that daughter because He knew you could handle it. And I know that it comes with a lot of responsibility. Some it's been a worse experience than others. But my prayer is that you can really look at and evaluate yourself and want to work better and do better and go through whatever healing you need to go through so that that oldest daughter syndrome is not your identity. That was you, that's you and your family, but outside of your family you are so much more. If I'm being transparent with y'all, some of my family, if not quite a bit of my immediate family, they don't really know me. And when I say they don't know me, they know me as in, my name is Jaylee, my phone number is this, I live here, I do that. But when it comes to my mindset, my goals, how I look at life, how I think about things, they couldn't even tell you probably my favorite color. And for some people it's like, oh, that's sad. I'm like, that's fine with me, because I personally took the time to heal and set boundaries for myself. And the point of this video is for you to also free yourself and not continue to walk in the paths that other people are trying to carve out for you. Because God, sometimes, if not most times, He has something completely different that He wants you to do. But our family and those unhealthy, toxic dynamics can be our detriment, especially in the Black and brown community. We are a very communal group, which is great, but sometimes we are communal to our own deficit. And it's not supposed to be that way. So yes, you're an oldest daughter of your family, but you are also so much more of who God has called you to be. Please like, please share, please subscribe to the channel. That helps boost my viewership, that helps boost me getting in the algorithm, that helps me reach the target population of young women that I'm trying to reach. And until next time, try to make the world a better place today.